The armature kit that I bought online came with multiple parts, template and instructions. To begin the assembly of the armature, there were 4 lengths of thin thread. The instructions and templates showed all the different lengths needed to be cut. To ensure that no materials were wasted, I measured all the different lengths needed for the parts, such as the arms or legs with a ruler. I then divided the parts evenly in relation to the lengths of metal threads. Once the lengths were measured, I used grips to secure the thread to the table so I could then cut it safely with a hacksaw without it moving. Then it was a matter of roughly screwing all the parts together to test if everything works, before properly permanently gluing them in place. Once I was happy that everything was of size, I used a small pin to place the thread lock glue in all the ball socket joints and screwed them into the thread. The process of building the set started by cutting the plywood to the sizes allocated for the different walls. Once rough rectangles were cut out, I measured the doors in my house and divided them by 7 to achieve the 1/7 scale, which is kept consistent through all the stop motion aspects. I then drew the door shape on the wood and cut it out with an angle grinder. To ensure accuracy, I tested cutting on an offcut before attempting the final cut. After the door shape was cut out, I kept the offcut to use as the actual door and sanded all edges before proceeding to the next step. To add a sense of realism, I cut out thin strips of wood to stick around the door as architraves. To measure them, I used a straight edge and made 3 marks lengthways before connecting them with a straight line. I then cut out numerous strips with a few excess for backup. On the ends of them, I cut a 45-degree angle miter joints. This is a common used joining method in woodworking, and I measured the miter joints with an angle measurer. I then used wood glue to attach the architraves to the wall, and then laid a heavy object and let it dry. In relation to painting, a thick quantity of paint is initially applied, followed by a smooth, consistent stroke pattern to ensure an even distribution of paint. The edges were generally completed first, then followed by the face of the wall. An initial white primer coat was done to ensure maximum traction and effectiveness was achieved in the yellow colour. Additionally, the walls were attached to the floor using white right-angle edges using epoxy glue to ensure that they would not fall apart. This process was a matter of applying the glue evenly to the white plastic edges and weighing it down with a heavy object and waiting for it to dry. The process of creating costumes and props on a small scale starts with getting the piece of fabric. With this pillow I made, I had to start by cutting foam to create the volume. Then I cut my white fabric to size, allowing for additional excess. Once completed, I then used the sewing machine to trace around the edge of the foam with the cotton over it. Afterwards, to neaten it up, I cut the excess fabric off with scissors. Once my set was fully complete, my costumes created, and my character finalized, I was able to begin animation. The first step when conducting this particular stop motion animation was to drill a hole which was a little larger than the diameter than the thread allocated to screw my character to the floor, and then I put the thread through the floor and screwed into his foot. A lot of time was spent trying to replicate previous frames due to inconsistent movements. As I got better at animating, this process became easy to achieve. Additionally, when creating animation in the stop motion style, when working with a complex armature, the animator has to factor in human anatomy and how a human moves in real life. This is the hardest part, and in each small movement I had to think about whether the final result will look natural.
I've completely animated this background to complement the organic feel in which the stop motion style emulates. As there are many frames in this sequence, I've simplified it by drawing 5 successive background frames and looping them to create the illusion that they have all been hand-drawn. However, all the other elements such as the shading was all done by hand, which took a while to complete, but was successful in conveying the organic feel. This frame-by-frame style animation relied on me drawing each frame by hand. For example, whilst doing the shadow animation, I had to draw each frame in crosshatch style and slightly deviate the shadow each time. So in result, hundreds of drawings of shadows were made to complete the final product. This 3D animation was not difficult as the 2D or stop motion animation, as most of the animations were moving the camera from point A to point B, although the degree of difficulty was when applying the animated texture to the object that I had made. This involved drawing 5 consecutive crosshatched files and multiplying them to 130 to cater for the amount of frames in the animation. After this, I checked the frame sequence button in the texture menu and exported the animation. Soundtrack creation involved a few components, then connecting the studio mic into the audio interface, which then connects to my computer, allowing me to record sounds into the mic and onto the computer. In creating the soundtrack, I played my final animation and improvised chords over it until I came up with final favourable chords. I then recorded the final chords to a beat as well as a melodic whistle. And after that, it was a matter of syncing the audio files up and adding some strings from within the program, as I could edit the individual notes. And then I was able to loop the final audio to create my soundtrack.